Hello again, everyone. Right, just a couple of dreams this time. Right, dream one. I appeared to be in some large mansion-type house where a large gathering of seemingly upper-class type men in smart suits was taking place, standing around in some huge room, talking amongst themselves, and sadly there were no women there. Then the scene changed and I found myself in some kind of a lecture hall. It had the characteristic setting of rows of benches with chairs going up in a staircase effect. I was observing from the front, looking directly at the rows of men seated there, to the left of the lecturer's podium that I couldn't actually see. It appeared to me that these were the same men, again no women, as I had seen earlier in the mansion. In fact, I recognised the man second left in the front row from the previous scene. He seemed almost to have been in charge. Next to him in the left corner sat a less smartly dressed man, to whom the first man leant across and said something. I did not hear what he said, but evidently it infuriated the scruffy man, who suddenly morphed into a large human-sized fox. Although he still wore the same clothes, he had a big bushy fox's brush sticking out from behind. All around erupted into panic mode. The scene changed again. I believe it was another day, and we were now outside the big house, seemingly occupying a corner plot at the junction of two roads. I drove round the corner to the front of the house, hoping to park in the long driveway. It proved to be full of cars, but I found a parking place to pull in just clear of the entranceway on the road. As I got out of the car, I saw the smart man coming up the drive with another man towards the entrance. The next and final scene was again in a street, but obviously in a less salubrious area. I was riding some weird contraption like a cross between a motorbike and an exercise machine, and pulled up at the curb. I was apparently expecting to meet a lady client there, one I recognised from the physical as a person I had known several years ago and lost track of. Suddenly a van appeared. When it got closer, I could see the woman client at the wheel. She looked at me with a somewhat stony face and drove past, stopping some way up the road behind me. I was just deciding whether to reverse up the road to meet her or do a 180 turn or stay put when the dream ended. When I discussed this with Kevin, he felt that the woman in the van was one of the dark forces, an imposter in fact, and it was evidently annoyed because I'd seen through the subterfuge. It stopped some distance away to see if I would go and join it in a move which would have meant a change of direction on my part. Thinking further about it, I think the first part of the dream set the scene, with the big house being the personal side full of the self-satisfied, ignorant majority. In scene 2, we saw them being taught or indoctrinated with the elite so-called required education system. The Foxman was perhaps a real guide trying to shake their belief system. In the third scene, I started to participate in the action rather than being simply an observer, but found it appropriate to watch from a place outside their house rather than go up their already overcrowded driveway. The prominent smart man was probably an over-puffed up political leader that the sheeple were blindly following. Over to you, Dwayne, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Peter. And yes, could understand that very well. So, yeah, you're seeing what's going on. And yes, we are constantly, like little foxes, trying to infiltrate what they're doing here, and they do see us. They don't like us. And it can be the opposite too. The real guides see who is, infiltrating and doing the same thing. It works both sides, doesn't it? So that experience can actually go either way. It's a good lesson to see it from all sides many times. So, no, thank you. And yes, vans are interesting, and again, it's interesting that the lady that you were supposed to meet in the physical that she's influenced by certain things too, so that's why it represented her. But it doesn't mean she's a bad person. But it's interesting that people on the surface, they put on a good front. They're nice people. Their composure is nice, etc. But they really sympathize with the systems here. They don't see through the whole thing. And these people sometimes are called sympathizers. And that is that these are people that, make things look good, sound good. They read the pretty words. They go to Bible school. They do their jobs, whatever. But at the same time, these sympathetic people, they unconsciously are controlled by the system, and they don't see that. They think that their composure has some kind of meaning to it, but actually, especially in creation, things get very real here. And for the most part, most of these people are tap-line, just like these people in the corporation. They're nice people, but at the same time, they've got a reptilian on each one of them. So do you want to hang around them too long? So anyhow, yes, thank you so much, Peter. That was very specific and well detailed. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay. Well, the second dream is a bit shorter, but rather weird. Right. I appeared to be up in the air somehow, looking at a two-lane road full of cars going past. Seemed to be a bridge quite close behind me, a bridge going over the road, off to the left. Right. Suddenly, I seemed to suddenly became enormously large, because with one hand I scooped up a handful of one lane full of cars, well, a certain number of them anyway, and picked them up, and then the cars immediately turned into sort of blue balls, in relative to my size, about sort of 2 inches in diameter, a handful of blue coloured balls, which I promptly threw down back onto the road, and they sort of bounced and went between the cars that were still down there on the inside lane, so nicely slotted in between each of the cars without actually hitting them, at which point they changed back to cars again. So we now had an inside lane full of cars and an outside lane that was empty. And then I found myself in the car, but I was, instead of taking advantage of the empty lane, I for some reason was at the back of the lane full of cars. And that was about it, really. Couldn't really sort of make a lot of sense of this one myself. I didn't really have a chance to sort of discuss it in any detail with Kevin. So I don't know what you can make of that. Please.
Peter, what did Kevin say? I always like to hear what Kevin has to say. Did he, Kevin? What's your take on this?
My first impression was if he was seeing himself as a very large person and looking down on all the little cars trundling along the roads, which represent various attitudes and ideas in creation. It looks to me as though he's having a sort of like a real awareness overview. He's reaching down, picking up a couple of the ideas, examining them, and then discarding them, almost like a practice of being objective to all the ideas that make up creation and such. Something like that, anyway.
Yes. Ideas are vehicles. And so, again, that's his real awareness. And this is where, you allow that real awareness to expose itself. Most of the time, the personal self is in the way because it's got so many attitudes going. Again, this is where you decide to practice being like the sun shining with no attitudes, but yet learn to see what life is and how it is seen. So yes, that's what it is. While we're in creation, I do the same thing. We take a look at ideas, see if they're workable in some way, either with our personal self or my view for me is I don't have a personal life. It's all about what's real, what makes sense with the whole of life, because that does make sense. But yeah, it's basically that. We go through all these little funny things, but yeah, here's this real awareness and the personal self. Eventually it will filter down. So many times we don't know what the experience means. But as we're patient and we just learn to pay attention to our awareness, well, it comes in and it seeps through the personal self and the literal mind. Yes, thank you, kids. Go ahead.
Right, thank you. That's about really all I've got this week, actually. But that's bye for me for the moment. With thanks.